So a visionary will see something before someone else. They're focused on purpose. They're not focused on transactional stuff. They're focused on connectivity. They're the world thinkers. So that's a visionary. 2, they live in full abundance. There's no scarcity. Full abundance. No scarcity, no excuses.
All right. Welcome to the podcast, Justin. Thanks so much for being here, friend.
Yeah, this will be a super interesting interview. You're from small town, and then people like us are usually aliens within our own family community and vertical. And so there might be one other person from your town but where you are in, Silicon Slopes, there's a lot of visionaries.
Yeah, we have a lot. Yeah, Silicon Slopes is a lot of fun. I've had a lot of these guys on the show, and so it's always interesting to when you talk about like visionaries and things like that, or when you talk about high performing individuals who find themselves, in that position. Hey, real quick, let's just kind of go off. I want to go right to the deep stuff really quick because I have a lot of fun doing this. But in your time interviewing visionaries, in your time, speaking with these individuals, what are some common traits or like threads that you see in these types of people?
Well, yeah. So you're a very high into it, and then you're curious. So those are two good things. And then just as background, so I'm either spending time with my family or connecting the world's top visionaries, and then have created 2 companies based on that purpose, connecting visionaries to serve humanity. And then before starting Entrepreneur Journey, I was a journalist for 20 years. So talked to top athletes, performers, actors. And then most of my days talking to folks with ADD, ADHD, diagnosed or undiagnosed. They're all over the place. And then my brain simplifies into patterns. So the question you ask, the commonalities of the traits, that's all my brain does is see the pattern in people and visionaries, which self included. Okay, so there's so many patterns. I will say the 2 that are the most obvious to me after just basically spending my entire life talking to people like that, including myself. First one is there are only 4 things that separate visionaries from humans, small business owners, consultants. There are only 4 things. And I'll go over them. So 1, bankruptcy or potential bankruptcy. 2, depression. 3, highest level of anxiety you can imagine. 4, likely and or possible traumatic experiences as a child, young adult. So humans, small business owners, consultants, those are excuses, preventers, playing not to lose. And then for a visionary, okay, figure it out. That's the motivation. So that's most people, are not visionaries because they make excuses. A visionary, no excuse.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one. Almost everyone I talk to, including myself, is 3 of those 4 things. And then the really successful ones are usually all 4. No excuses. Okay. And then, again, I was a journalist for 20 years. You don't get into that for revenue or office space. I don't really care about any of that stuff. And now very thankful to run 2 global companies that only partner with top visionaries or folks that will become one of those people. And there are 3 attributes in their mindset, only 3. There are only 3 because I simplified everything into patterns. So 1 is they're a visionary. So not business owner, not consultant, and visionary has nothing to do with how many employees you have, right? That's totally meaningless.
Right.
So visionary will see something before someone else. They're focused on purpose. They're not focused on transactional stuff. They're focused on connectivity. They're the world thinkers. So that's a visionary. 2, they live in full abundance. There's no scarcity. Full abundance. No scarcity, no excuses. And then 3, this is where the fake visionaries, what I like to call them, they get stopped. A true visionary will only look at things as investments, not costs. So if someone asks, what do you cost or charge? I will never talk to that person again because they are their own preventer with their own scarcity mindset because they think they're a visionary. They think they have abundance, but they look at things as cost, not investment. And a visionary would never look at things as a cost, ever.
Ooh, interesting. Okay. So I like the last 3. The first 4, that's Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah. I mean, myself included.
Right.
That's fun. That's crazy because, my follow-up question is always like, all right, so how do people cultivate that? And I think the last three are pretty easy to kind of understand, right? Like step into the abundance mindset, view things as investments, and then think long-term, think like, very, very strategic. And so my follow-up question is always like, well, how do you do that? But I don't know if I want to talk to people about like,
what do you mean?
Like, you know what I'm saying? So like, if somebody said like,
because I just asked the question, I never overthink anything. I just ask.
Yeah. Good point. But like, it's always funny because you're like, all right, how do people cultivate that? And you can't really cultivate depression or anxiety or trauma, right? Like kind of just.
Well, sure you can. Absolutely. You absolutely,
all right.
if you're,
all right. Tell me more.
Yeah. Well, that's what makes a visionary. I'm in a group called Strategic Coach. Very grateful to be in that. Dan Sullivan, co-founder. He was in his mid-30s, bankrupt and divorced on the same day. I mean, bankrupt and divorced. Okay. Right now he runs arguably the top entrepreneur group in one of our favorite PR partners. His grandfather was decapitated in front of him when he was a child. He went to Hong Kong him and his dad went to Hong Kong when he was a child with $10 in their pocket. They created 2 8-figure companies, and he hired a PR firm. He created an at-home robot to help people with Alzheimer's dementia. Because mom has Alzheimer's and dementia, so he created an at-home robot. And so what you said was really interesting because, again, I have zero business background. I didn't know what an S Corp was when I started first company in 2017. And then first couple of years was talking to small business owners, still some employees, some consultants, and they were usually 0, 1, or 2 of those 4 things. Now, as you go higher, they're all 3s and 4s. I've talked to 3 or 4 people in the last 2 years under less than 3 of those 4 things.
Yeah. That's good. That's a good one, man. Well, I think okay. Then the next question should be like, why those 4 things?
Tremendous. No one's ever asked that. And I haven't thought about why it's those 4 things other than, and this is why I love doing these shows, because I learn in real time, and someone asks you the question and then you think about the answer.
Yeah.
I'll answer it like this. I actually do have the answer, which is really interesting. So I was talking to one of Africa's top entrepreneurs, Dr. Akintoye Akindele. Okay, so he's lost millions, if not billions, made millions, if not billions. I was telling him about the all 4 things. I think this does answer your question.
Okay.
The 4 things. And maybe now what you're saying, I actually fully agree. I don't know if I fully agree with him. So I was telling him about the 4 things.
Yeah.
And he said, you had to go through all 4. You had to. It was a requirement to transform from pride to purpose.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily agree with it because I'm 3 of those 4 and I'm full purpose.
Yeah.
I'm the only one, knock on wood, I haven't had to worry about is bankruptcy or potential bankruptcy.
Yeah.
But now that you ask that, maybe that's the only way to shed the last bit of pride.
Well, it's interesting because, you're saying that, and then I'm thinking about it. I asked a question and I have like an inclination about it. And I think that's just where grit comes from. So when you're forced against a wall and you have no other choice and you have to make it work or like
figure it out.
Yeah. Then I think you do. Right. I think.
But most people don't. Most people don't. That's my point, is they don't.
Right.
Most people would choose to be a visionary if they could do it, but those 4 things are excuses. They don't do it. That's why they stay small business or consultant or go back and get a job. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And, but there also is a lot of meaning that, like, I do stand-up comedy quite a bit. And I think the best stand-up comics always come from
most damage. They're more damaged than
all of us.
They're the only group that I can think of that is as a whole more damaged than entrepreneurs. The only
Yeah.
one.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And I think, and then the best ones just, they come from that, right? Like
So you're double damage. You're entrepreneur and comedian. That's really interesting.
well, I find that's how I cope, right? Like, I
Right.
find laughing about it. Well, because
It's
when
your shield. It's your
yeah,
shield.
well, it's a shield, like definitely, but it's also a way for me to like make sense of it. Like if I can step back and like laugh a bit, then you can make sense of it.
Absolutely.
If you can make sense of it, then you can solve it, right? Like then you
Well,
can.
that's a good point too. If you can make sense of the trauma, then you can, and so you can solve the trauma by creating something. Man, this is really interesting. So, okay. So again, all my brain does is turn everything into patterns. So what a true entrepreneur, a true visionary is, they're the most damaged person with the best coping skills, the most damaged, but then they have the highest IQ, most grit to your, most hustle, highest EQ, most intuition, no excuses.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure you talk to a lot of people like this too, but I talk to 1 to 2 visionaries a week that have let entrepreneur life destroy their family life or prevented them from anything meaningful, because they take all that damage and those coping skills to create all this stuff, and then they just torch anything meaningful in the process. So,
yeah. I mean, that's definitely somewhere you don't want to be.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Idea.
Yeah. I think you definitely got to get to the point where you can, because you've got to have some things, I think, and the visionaries and high worth individuals that I meet, they find a way. Balance doesn't exist. They're fully present in whatever moment they're in. So whenever they're at work, they're fully present. Whenever they're with their family, they're fully present. So there's no balance. There's only presence, right? And so
presence.
I think that's where a lot of people get kind of lost. Is like it's like some of these individuals, right, who are like, they pour everything into their business and everything else kind of like gets lost. And then inevitably we talk about balance, right? And I think I've interviewed enough people to come to the conclusion that balance isn't the word, that it's more presence that is the word there. And because you're never going to balance it, like multitasking doesn't exist.
I don't know. I mean, I literally wrote a book about how to build collaborative global companies while putting your loved ones first. And my wife is transitioning out of pediatrics. She's the COO of Second Company. And we're about to be named one of top 5 masterminds on planet. So,
but do you think it's balance, or do you think it's like, just like when you're with your wife, you're with your wife, when you're with your company, you're with your company, and
my wife is part of my company.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then I was going to say that too, and then the people that, there's one other argument, which is there is no difference. And that's a fine argument to make, I think.
I mean, our sons are 11 and 9. They're both maniac visionaries like I am. The 9-year-old already wants to take over both of companies. So I think, and
all right.
I mean, see this again, this is what I like in real time, but I think to your point, the key is that being present and this is really, okay. So being present, focused on my family, allowed the creation of a collaborative global company. I never thought my wife would be like, oh, hey, I'm tired of hanging out with humans, or parents complaining about their children. I want to phase out of pediatrics and be COO of your company. But I think by being present and being consistent in the way running both companies, that was attractive to her. And that actually created a better life balance for her.
Yeah.
So this is, it's not that we agree to disagree. I think we're coming at this, the same thing in different ways, in collaborative ways.
Which is something, by the way, I always find that is the case. And the more interviews I do, the more I learn. There's a funny story that I like to this is when it kind of changed for me, but I was watching a short video, and it was like way back in like 2016 or something like that. And it was the presidential election. And I watched a short clip of this person saying like, why I'm not left or right. And then he panned to like his bookshelf. And I was like, and so the more that I learn, the more that I read, the more that I interview, the more I realize like, yeah, just like what you're saying, right? Like there's many roads essentially. And it doesn't really matter like the road necessarily, but how you get there. It's
100%. Well, one of my good friends, his name is Scott Danner, pure, like all of my friends, he's a pure visionary. And then I am not an ideator. Almost everyone I talk to is they're an ideator, shiny object, ADD. ADD is not a disorder. It's a sign of genius mislabeled by humans. But once or twice a month, someone like Scott will say something truly transformational, and then I'll write it down, and then it becomes a way of life, and then a chapter in a book or something. But so what he said was every meeting is an opportunity for mentorship, every meeting. So I go into every meeting with the approach of it's an opportunity for me to be mentored by someone, and then for me, hopefully, to provide something that could be of value to someone else.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I mean, when you approach conversations like that, I think something beautiful happens. In my experience, when both parties, like with these interviews, right? Like if I approach the conversation knowing that I don't know everything, and then the person's kind of in the same boat and we're trying to work towards the truth, I think those conversations make something very special. I've turned down podcast guests before who just want to like impose something. Well, yeah. And I'm like, well, I've interviewed just as many, if not more people than the next person. Right. And I've always found that like, I think it's something very humble about even some of the top people. Now, by the way, I'm going to stop and pause right here. There's a dichotomy that I think should be recognized. And that is like some of the biggest visionaries, they are humble. They do take advice.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you do have like these people, in the same breath, they're like some of the most insecure people. Like everybody's kind of out to get them kind of thing. And I think it's a very interesting place to be and a very interesting conversation to navigate. One of my favorite books is The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. And
Robert Greene, Mastery, second favorite book. Third favorite.
Mastery. Yeah, Mastery is a good one. I like the 33 Strategies of War, 48 Laws of Power. I like those books. Very much in my collection.
So this is what I mean. Like,
yeah,
we've never talked. I mean, we've talked online, but we've never met or talked before like this. But it's all like, it doesn't surprise me at all. Yeah. I'm guessing you've read Man's Search for Meaning. If you haven't, okay. Right. The second favorite, my Mastery used to be number 2. But the second favorite book now is Outwitting the Devil, Napoleon Hill. Most people know Think and Grow Rich. To me, Outwitting the Devil is 1,000 times better for a visionary.
I like Outwitting the Devil. The Think and Grow Rich isn't one of my favorite ones, but
so where you agree with that? Yeah, that's hilarious. I mean, that one's like the one that, like a true visionary, Outwitting the Devil. That's like the key. It's like unlocking all these doors of visionary power that you wouldn't necessarily expect, but it's like a guidebook for visionaries. And then Man's Search for Meaning, again, this is for your audience. For those who have not read Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, he survived the Holocaust. His entire family was killed. He lost all his life's work, and he found meaning in that. Yeah. So like, if there's anything to take from this show, I mean, please read that. Please read that.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Please, that's the ultimate. And I think why I'm saying that is like, so there are 34 Gallup Clifton Strength Finders, GALLUP Clifton Strength Finders. Okay. So, by the way, I'm very high in self-assurance, so I don't have imposter syndrome. A lot of entrepreneurs are very low in self-assurance. So that's why they have imposter syndrome, or people like them. But anyway, I am dead last in empathy, dead last. However, for visionaries who don't make excuses, I have endless empathy, like beyond like, it's like I almost stop talking because like I get so immersed in their pain, like I feel it.
Yeah.
And then Man's Search for Meaning is like the ultimate. That's the ultimate that's the ultimate no excuses. The ultimate of ultimate.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting. I like those books. I mean, I like that book. I was introduced to that through my Stoic philosophy. And I always like to put a caveat on that. People who've listened to this before might have heard me say it, but I always tell people I heard about Stoicism before it was cool. My mother introduced us at a very young age to these ideas.
Yeah, this calmness from you came from have you done your IQ? Have you ever done it?
No, I don't know how to do. I don't know how to do. Like,
you don't have ADD, or you do? Do you have?
I do have ADHD.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and by the way, I've always thought too that ADHD, one of the things that I discovered about ADHD, and I've always wanted to talk to other people about this, but it's like the special ADHD intuition.
Right.
Yeah, you're familiar. Yeah.
Oh
And
yeah.
yeah, man, and that's why I don't like when I was diagnosed as an adult with ADHD. And I help with like mood stabilizers, and those kind of things. But as far as like when they were like, hey, let's try like stimulants, I was like, no way, because that'll turn off like my favorite thing, which is my ADHD intuition, which is like being able to go into a room or like sit with a person and just be like I know who you are now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for well, you're like a stoic ADD. But I just put it in the chat, but Dr. Doug Brackman, he wrote the book Driven, which is like the definitive book on ADHD. He's become a good friend of mine.
Check it out.
Yeah. So there's iamdriven.com. There's a 5-minute assessment that's free.
Yeah.
And so the typical human is a small gray circle. The typical driven is a giant. You're a giant red circle for sure. And then I sent him, so I sent him mine, and he was genuinely confused in a good way. He's never seen it. So my intuition, one of the things is intuition. My intuition, like yours, is like it's completely off the charts. But I'm actually less bored than an average human. Because I never leave my zone of genius ever, which is spending time with my family and connecting visionaries to serve humanity. Most people like us are like bored all the time because they're like shiny object, shiny object, shiny object, shiny object.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, and I'm not like that. I only have 2 shiny objects: family and network.
Yeah, well, I think what helps curb the shiny object thing is like what you said, just staying in what you're good, like staying in your realm of genius, right? Like,
and you learn that from a young age of calmness and peace.
Yeah, I think so. Like I'm always a wait guy. Like patience. You know what I mean? Like I think that's what. And by the way, I remember when I was learning about when I was like diagnosed, but I've loved Stoic philosophy. Like I got it tattooed on my arm, right? Like this is something that I really enjoy. And I remember being in an ADHD group and saying like Stoicism has really helped me. Like I really enjoy this philosophy. And there was one guy who pushed back pretty hard, and I didn't really understand where he was coming from about like how he was like Stoic philosophies and like ADHD, they don't mix. And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, dude, they do though. Like they do.
Well,
it was an interesting conversation.
My uncle had me read Marcus Aurelius, The Prince, when I was younger.
Yeah, meditations.
Yeah, and I was having this conversation earlier today, and this will be kind of long-winded, but there's a point at the end that dovetails and complements what you're talking about. So people like us, not always, but usually marry stabilizing humans. Not always, but like a teacher, my wife's a pediatrician, or a nurse, or social work. Okay, so I have found the equivalent of that stabilizing human in a mindset or a stoic or stoicism type way is to have a grateful filled mindset. It's like a stabilizer for people like us. So like the first thing I do every day is a grateful journal to my wife. What I'm grateful for her the previous 24 hours. Without her, very bad situation. Not good. And then 5 days a week, I've already included this and that, but I do a grateful journal on LinkedIn. What I'm grateful for the previous, that day. It's like a commercial for other people. And when you're constantly grateful, it's hard to be ungrateful. But again, it's like a stabilizer. It's like a mindset stabilizer. Stoicism.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, gratitude's one of those big ones that people miss. It is very powerful. I think it just shifts your mind to focus on things that are happening to you and excuse me, for you and not to you. Yeah, exactly. I think it shifts that focus, but that's a big shift. Like that's a really important shift that not a lot of people make. Because it's really easy to be like, focus on what you don't have.
No. Yeah. So, okay. Thank you. I appreciate you saying that. So I strongly feel you're either born top visionary on planet or you're not. I think most people choose this, but again, those 4 things, excuses. If you are born like this, which I think, I mean, it's rare. I mean, visionaries are very rare, usually aliens within family, community, and vertical. But if you are born like this, you can work on that mindset every day. And a visionary will do what it takes to do that. They will. That's the point, is they won't make the excuse. They'll do it.
Right. Well, and you know what's interesting? This conversation kind of brought to light another angle of it, which is one of the things that I've really enjoyed. One of my favorite authors is Mark Manson, and he's only written he wrote 2 books and then ghostwrited another one. But one of the books, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, he said it's not about the question isn't like how bad do you want it? It's like, what are you willing to suffer to get it, or like
pay the price.
Yeah. And what's interesting is you brought up those 4 traits. And so for somebody who has those 4 traits, that's like, what do you like? That's not really a question anymore. It's kind of like, well, my life is like, you know what I mean? Like, what is this? What is this another way? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like, let's just go for it. Cause like, it's not going to get any worse.
or not. I still, I mean, I know most people don't go for, that's the point. They don't.
Right. And I think it's because they get caught up and they don't have the experience.
They don't have the IQ or EQ. They don't.
Well, yeah. And I think it just gets like, once you go through something traumatic and you resolve it and you come through it, right, then everything else is kind of like, all right, well, we can do this. Like I did that. Right.
That's the EQ. That's the EQ.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the EQ to understand even what's going through, I was talking to my friend Lee Brower. He's a oh man, great visionary. And I haven't done the research on this, but he was talking about something called XQ, which is experience quotient. And that's essentially like, if you have the IQ and the EQ, the emotional quotient, then you can, then the experience quotient, the X quotient is like the next level. It's like you go through all this experience because of all this pain and all this trauma, and then you just learn from it. You experience how that feels, and you're like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, it's an opportunity.
It's an opportunity. Well, one of the chapters in Epic Life, the latest book, Epic Life, is uncertainty is an opportunity to collaborate. So the uncertainty, COVID chaos. All right, so you created a show to connect people. I created a second company that's about to be named one of the top 5 masterminds on planet that only connects visionaries to serve humanity. But that's what you do, because it's an opportunity to collaborate.
Yeah, well, of course. And then
but not though. Most people don't say, of course. That's my point. Of course, for people like us, yes, obviously, duh. But that's not the grand. Most people don't say, of course.
So you said something interesting, and I want to push back just a little bit, just to explore it, though. Just to explore it. Okay. So you say you got it. Somebody who's born a visionary, or they're not.
Yes.
Does it happen late? Can you discover it later in life that you are a visionary? Maybe you uncover some of these things.
Well, okay. So first of all, that's not a pushback. That's a perfect follow-up question. So I started first company 6 days after turning 40. I'm 46 now. Okay. So 6 days after turning 40, after job salary as a journalist was cut in half, I couldn't find a job. And then I'm like, oh, I'll just incorporate. I don't know anything about business. But I was always this person, meaning like, so when I was a journalist, I was an entrepreneur who happened to be a journalist. I just didn't know that until becoming an entrepreneur. So again, people like us are usually aliens within our own family, community, and verticals. The only people who understand us are top entrepreneurs. So when I was journalist, I was writing about and connecting cool people changing the world. And then journalists who are journalists write about like taxes and politics and crime. I'm like, I don't even know what so they were looking at me like, what are you doing? And I'm like, what are you writing about all this negative stuff for? I didn't even understand it. So I think, to your point, folks might not be aware they are this, but you're either this or you're not.
That's fair. I can appreciate that. And the reason, because I grew up in a town in the small Midwest.
Right.
And there are some people, I think what this turns into, and I think is a dangerous way to turn into, is like how you find happiness, right? So I know a lot of people who make, like, the average income in my hometown, even today, is $30,000 a year. Yep. And I know some of the happiest people.
Right.
And so I don't know. I think if wherever you find happiness. If you're a visionary, you're going to find happiness there. If you're not, it's okay. Like, yeah.
Let's combine it. Let's combine it. Okay. Cause this is, again, first time we've ever talked in detail. So
yeah,
there are only 2 10X things I care about. Only 2. I don't care about revenue, employee count. That's transactional business owner stuff. I've never cared about that. Funnel stuff's it annoys me. I don't care about any of that stuff. Okay. Right. 2 things. This is simple logic. Okay. Logic with visionary maniac combined. So 10X, number 1, experiences in life with my family. If you have a good family life, you have a good life. If you know someone from your hometown or anyone who has had a good family life that has not had a good life, I would like to meet that person. I don't care if they're a visionary or not. If you know someone who's had a good family life that has not had a good life, I haven't met, all I've done is talk to people. I've never met anyone like that. Okay. Well, thank you. And then 2, 10Xing network on a global level. When you increase your network on a global level, it creates endless opportunities for your network and yourself. And I found that all this business owner stuff that so many people are focused on and just winning the wrong game, and they're not happy because they're focused on things that actually don't make them happy. But I found all this business owner stuff takes care of itself with that focus on family and network.
Beautifully said. I don't think I need to add anything more to that, because I think you're right. I think if you take care of the people around you, they'll take care of you. And a rising tide.
People around you. Take care of the people around you. They'll take care of you. That's beautiful simplification.
Yeah. I genuinely believe that. Like, I think if you just do the right thing, so there's a tenet in Stoicism, the Latin phrase summum bonum, which is the highest good. So virtue is defined as doing the right thing for the right reason, right? So it doesn't matter what happens afterwards. There's no ulterior motive. You do the right thing because it's the right reason. And that's essentially what karma is. In Christianity, it's called the law of the fast, or the law of the harvest. And to our Buddhist and Hindu friends, it's called karma, but it's essentially the same thing. But here's what's funny. I read a book on karma once, and they said something funny where they were like, karma doesn't need you to mess up to do, karma is not an evil thing, right? It's like, I think the best definition for karma I've ever heard was from a UFC fighter, Dustin Poirier. After he won a big fight, he said, "Karma's not a bitch; she's a mirror." And I was like, "That's it, dude." He said that. That was it, and I was like, "Yeah." So when you take care, the people around you are essentially mirrors, right? They're the reflection of what you want to see in yourself.
If you're not a litmus test for people you serve, it's hypocrisy. That's it, right. Like, you don't, if you can't see yourself in that and what you want to become and the people around you, if you can't see what you want to see, then it's a you problem, not a them problem. It's amazing we've never talked in detail before. It's like how old are you?
29.
Yeah, 29. That sounds like, but you're like an ancient wisdom. My 9-year-old is he's a lot like you.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Do you have children yet?
Yeah, I have 2.
You have 2. How old?
Yeah, my daughter is 7. My son is 5.
You had your kids young. And is your wife a stabilizing human?
Yeah. Yep.
So what is her profession?
She's a stay-at-home mom.
And what is she educated in?
She like dental hygiene.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's hilarious. That's the first time I've heard dental hygienist. Okay, but yeah, so like the greatest joy of this life by far, again, 10Xing experience life with family, is that the children get to see this world even exist, and then they can do what they want with it. So you got to see maybe not necessarily this world, but the philosophy that can lead to greatness in this world. You saw that at a young age. And then our 9-year-old, both of our sons are, they're highly intelligent, very good children. My wife's a pediatrician, so they like have her kindness and empathy and whatever that stuff is. And then they're maniacs like me. But the 9-year-old, when he was 8, his name's Chase. We were talking about spending time in IQ. And then Chase provided the single best definition of what life actually is that I've ever heard, ever. And then all I do is talk to brilliant people like you all did. But so this is when he was 8, about 6 months ago. So he considers life one long great day. So there's no November or Wednesday or 2023 or whatever. I don't know, whatever that is. So yesterday's before you're born, tomorrow's after you die. And then he said, because he's a simplifier like you and me, for sure. You're definitely a simplifier. But so he said there are only 2 ways, only 2, to have a great long day. Only 2. 1, create more living things. The fundamental purpose of any living thing is to create more living things. If there was an argument against that, there'd be no life, but feel free to, not you, but anyone feel free to. So that can be a child, a foundation, a company, planting a tree, flower, I don't know, create life. 2, do what you like to do and what you're good at and keep getting better at it. Like Earl Nightingale said, success is progressive realization of a worthy ideal. So keep getting better at that worthy ideal.
It's a great way to think about it. Then you don't get caught because we're just bouncing back all the things that have taught us our mindset. But depression lives in the past and anxiety lives in the future. So if you just think about it,
interesting.
Changed my view of how.
Well, it makes sense. Depression lives. Oh, that's really. I'm gonna talk to my kids about it. Well, maybe not depression. I won't use that word, but
sure, that's fair.
Lives in the past, but anxiety's in the future.
Well, yeah. I mean, you think about it. It certainly makes sense in my life. I'm not a therapist or a psychologist or anything, but when I think about that phrase, when I heard that, I heard it from a therapist, but when I thought about that, it definitely my anxiety. And so I curbed my anxiety by, who said that? Was it like Mark Twain or who said that? He's just, if you worry just means you suffer twice. Worrying means you just suffer twice. You know what I mean? Or like that guy who said, I've suffered a great deal of things in my life, none of which have come true. Like come to pass, right? Like you just like get this in your head, like I'm gonna, all these things, and then you have to really train your brain through experience that like, no, this hasn't happened yet. It's not here yet. Like, and by the way, another great Stoic tenet that I live by is the Latin phrase would be premeditatio malorum, which is the premeditation of evils. So I approach life with a counterintuitive thought, which is if I do this and the worst thing that happens, like an investment, right? If I do this investment and the worst thing happens, I lose it all and I don't ever get it back. Like, will I be okay? If the answer is yes, then I'm in, right? Like if I can't get to the yes answer yet, then I don't do it, right? Because once you get to the point where like, look, the worst thing that's going to happen if I knock on this door and ask this person to buy, they're going to tell me to F off. They're going to slam the door. They might call the cops, like all of these things, right? And if they do that, I'll be okay. Like it might be a pain, but I'll be fine. So if that's the answer, then knock on the door, get it done.
Well, right.
Yeah. Then you're fine.
Well, there's 2 things, two things from that too.
Yeah.
So this is my litmus test for what you just talked about or visionary. So my father was, he was 61 when I was born. He was born in 1916 and, he was a World War II hero, shot down multiple times in combat, many times without a parachute. And he would just get back into another plane. So, okay. So that's what you either can do that or you can't. Okay. So most people can't do that. They're not. Okay.
Yeah.
And then 2, a question I receive all the time is, so what do you worry about with your company? I go, nothing. I go, nothing. And they're like, well, what do you worry about? I go, anything happening to my wife. Anything. That's it. That's what I actually genuinely worry about. But the business stuff, that stuff will take care of itself. But if anything happens to my wife, that's a significant problem.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I named my daughter, I gave my daughter a very specific name to help me remember that. her name is Lily. Comes from the end of Matthew chapter 6. So if you're familiar with the Bible, in that specific chapter, that's when Jesus is teaching, and he says, "Consider the lilies of the field, how they toil not." And he says, "And I say unto you that even Solomon, arrayed in all of his glory, was not designed like one of these." And so, how can Solomon, or excuse me, and I'm paraphrasing now, but how can this flower that's cast into the oven tomorrow, right? It grows and then cast into the oven tomorrow. Like how is that so beautiful? And then your father would forget you. And so the end of the paragraph there is, take ye therefore no thought for the morrow will take care of the things of itself. So her name is a reminder for me to stay in the present. Because that's essentially what that verse.
Wow, we are so similar and different. The oldest child, Jake, he's named after my wife's grandfather, who was a very great, strong man. And then his middle name is Mike, after my dad. And a name is so important. Chase is the Hebrew word Hassan, which he is named after, it means strong. Strong.
Yes. Yeah. I come from a culture, so I'm Polynesian, part Polynesian.
No kidding.
What?
Polynesian.
Yeah. So the joke.
LDS? Are you LDS?
Yeah, I am LDS. Yep.
You are LDS. Oh God, the best entrepreneur religion. Let me see. I have the Book of Mormon here somewhere. Where is it? Are you practicing LDS or lapsed?
Yeah. No. I practice.
Love the LDS. Where's my Book of Mormon?
Yeah, those missionaries, dude. Those door knockers.
Where did you do your mission?
I served in St. George, Utah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
What? You didn't go to some third world. You're the only person I've ever met who did a mission in the United States.
Oh, there's quite a few of them, but it was foreign to me. I mean, I'm from Iowa, man. The culture between here and the Midwest is completely different. Like it was a shock for me. I'd never seen mountains.
Yeah, I was just out in Jackson Hole last weekend.
Yeah, like I'd never seen mountains, and then I'd never met a community like that. And I served mostly on college campuses, but.
Okay, let me, this is, so again, I know a gajillion LDS. I know a gajillion Labs LDS. They're really interesting. I know
what did you call him?
A Labs LDS. So he was a former Mormon drug dealer. So he was raised with the Mormon ideology, and then
Labs Mormon. That's actually really
a Labs. Oh, I know in Utah. I know a lot of them, but
that's fair.
Why I was in Jackson Hole, I'm part of this. It's a foundation where we're repurposing. We're basically saving the ecosystems in the United States. So the first piece of land was this that we toured was 100,000 acres. 100,000 acres. That's 1/7 the size of Rhode Island. So it was, and we were the only people out there. And then most of the folks in the group are on the board. I'm on the board. Are LDS. I am not LDS, but sure. I kind of am. So like, I was raised Jewish, and then Jews and Mormons, top two entrepreneur religions, because you're pushed to the brink, near extermination, go off into the middle of nowhere. So you figure it out, and then I was talking to I talked to a lot of LDS folks, and he goes, "Oh, well, there's a fundamental difference between Jews and Mormon." I'm like, "Oh, tell me. I just want the answer, right? Like, give me the answer."
Yeah.
So he's like, now this is him saying this, not me. Okay, I'm just telling you. So it's like, okay, so I just want to make sure that, okay. So he's like, well, the Jewish folks are focused on law, finance, the entertainment business, transactional stuff. And he's like, the Mormons, they're focused on relationships, Mormon mission. You knock on 5,000 doors to find 5 new Mormons.
Yeah. That's
thank you for telling me that. I'm a Mormon. And then I'm like, and then I had another conversation with he's half Jewish, but married to a Mormon. Okay. Married to a Mormon. Okay. So So just think about that for a minute. Okay. So,
that would
and
be
then
fun.
it's fascinating, right? So, so then we were talking about religion because it always goes back to religion. Always. The entrepreneurs, like I'm in all these entrepreneur groups, invest a lot of money in them. All these breakouts, we always talk about religion every time. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, religion's just like an entrepreneurial operational system. That's what it is. Okay, so then we were talking, and then the Mormons are like the best sellers, the fastest growing religion. Sell. We want you. 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 They're great. Fine.
Yeah.
The Jews, they don't want anybody to become a Jewish person. Do you know how hard you have to work? Like you have to beg to and then because so the Mormons are the best sellers. The Jews are just the buyer. They don't care if you join or not. And that's how I am. I'm like, I don't sell anything.
Yeah.
I mean, people pay a lot of money to be part of groups and stuff, but I'm not selling anything. I'm just the people. So I'm a Jewish Mormon Jew who almost married a Southern Baptist black woman, where I was the only white person in the church, and then I've taken Catholic communion like 4 or 5 times. So it's like all these religions.
I enjoy exploring other religions. It's very fun. And yeah, a lot of I have a lot of friends inside and outside of the LDS faith, and the entrepreneurs that I know outside of the LDS faith do have very strong faith that I've known.
I think it's important to have one of the chapters in Epic Life is God winks. I just think things are meant to be. I'm always, it's very rare that talk to people like us that they don't believe in some type of higher power.
Yeah. Well, I think I think there's something very special about it. I mean, yeah. And I don't really, I'm agnostic to the point where like, I don't really care what anybody else does, like what they believe or anything like that. As long as we can get it done, like we get it done,
Yeah. So you're like a hybrid of, you're a hybrid of genetics, culture, religion. Super interesting.
Well, we had that, like I grew up Mormon, obviously. And then both of my parents were Mormon, but when we lived in Iowa, I was like the only Mormon in my high school.
Were they there because of a mission? Is that how they ended up in Iowa?
No. So yeah, how a bunch of Polynesians ended up in Iowa. That's a long story.
I was going to ask because your tattoo looked like Moai or
So I got that. This was part of my coming of age thing, but I enjoyed that. It was a very spiritual experience. No, my parents met at BYU. So the joke I always tell, like when I do stand up, is like my dad's Russian, my mom's Hawaiian, and that's what happens when your parents meet at BYU. And then you get this little thing, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway,
Russian, Hawaiian, Iowan,
all over.
Mormon.
Done it.
I mean, wow.
Done it. I never know what's
at 29.
Yeah. Crazy stuff.
Yeah. Cause you're like an old soul in a young body. And then I'm guessing you have a very childlike, like you're like a child, with children, like a little kid. That's how.
Yep. I love kids. I love babies. They're my favorite thing.
Yeah. I don't really like talking to like human adults. It gets really awkward and uncomfortable. But like I just hang out with my kids and their friends and play football with them. But with like people like you, I'm like the biggest extrovert on the planet.
Yeah. That's so true. Well, Justin, this conversation went by way too fast. I loved every minute of it. Hey, before I let you go officially on the podcast, tell everybody where they can follow you, where they can get your stuff, all that good stuff.
I challenge your visionary Mormon brain here to, because I think it's hilarious how like you have these deep philosophical conversations, and at the end of shows, you're like, "Can we have your website?" Yeah, I think there needs to be a better thing. You to do this. Someone like us to do this, where we cut. I mean, it's just so ridiculous. It's so I know it has to be done. I get, but
I mean, this is your show. I gotta let you sign off.
But like we just like talked about. It's brepicnetwork.org. Brepicnetwork.org.
Amen.
Oh my God. So funny. Oh,
all right. I love it, Justin. Here, I'm going to sign off.